This presentation includes forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties. Actual results may differ materially as a result of various risk factors, including those described in the 10-Ks, 10-Qs, and 8-Ks VMware files with the SEC.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chris Wolf.
All right. How was that for an opening keynote, huh? Yeah. Not bad, not bad. I got a little polite agreement. We'll start with that. That's okay. My job is really, I'm like the opening comedian, right? I'm the crappy comedian that's just kind of warming up the audience, and you're just going to clap a little bit, be a little polite, and then Mark and Purnima are going to come in and really just bring the house down. So I'm going to do my best to transition over to them and really just start to kick things off and get started. What you heard in the opening keynote this morning is your truth. Something you know quite well, that application deployments are accelerating. Now, if we think about this, we're looking at more applications deployed over the next 5 years than have been deployed over the last 40 years. That's a pace of velocity that none of us in our IT careers have ever seen before. This doesn't mean that our world is crumbling around us, right? We don't have that choice. It means that we have to do things differently. We have to do things more efficiently. We have to bake in the expectation of change and agility as design principles in everything we do. And that's what we're going to be talking to you about here today. You know, these applications are quite complex. Machine learning, next-gen business applications, Internet of Things. We're moving applications, data, intelligence closer to where our people are, closer to where our data is, where our services and machines are. And this is just the start, right? We're at the start of some really special times in IT. And while this is exciting, at the same time, it creates some new challenges, and it also gives us the opportunity to look back and say, you know, how can we do things with a fresh set of eyes? How can we do things better, more efficiently, so that we can start to recapture some of our time and focus even more on innovation? Now, the cloud portfolio was introduced this morning, and this has been a continuation of the strategy that we've had for a number of years, certainly starting with our commitment to modern applications and enterprise Kubernetes. And Kubernetes is really that underpinning of all of that flexibility and control that you can have for running your applications anywhere that business needs might require. Being able to have that flexibility and control not just for the application and the code, because sometimes that can be the easy part, but also having that flexibility for your operations as well. So no matter where our applications can run, my operations are going to follow that as well. That long tail of operations can be quite complex. And that's a challenge that we've been focused on at VMware for a number of years in terms of providing that global consistency for operations as well. You're going to hear much more about that in the keynote as we move forward. Now, underpinning all of this is VMware Cloud Foundation, which is really our ubiquitous layer that you need in terms of running your applications. Now, no matter how many layers of abstraction we put above our applications and above the infrastructure, at the end of the day, someone has to be there to do the processing. Somebody has to lay down the networks and security. Somebody has to bake in all of this flexibility for no matter where your applications run, so I can meet the performance, scale, availability, and security requirements that I might have. Now, on top of all this, of course, is operating these stacks. So whether those applications and services are running natively in clouds, and of course across multiple clouds that you have today, but also being able to do so in a way that provides me that consistent management, cost optimization, and lots of cool tools that we have in our portfolio that Purnima is going to be getting into in a bit. Now, if that's not challenging enough, think about the silos that we're managing today. And you know what, I think for many of you out there, you were saying, you know what, man, if I had 3 silos, that would be great. 3 silos? Heck yeah, I wish I had 3 silos. Right, I might have 3 dozen silos today. And this is also really important for us, is to really help you to consolidate. I don't want to have policy living in lots of different places and fragmented between cloud providers, between sites, between management domains. The more that we can bring this together, the more that we can drive consistency in how we operate, the better off we all are. And again, this is all about driving efficiencies and freeing time, taking time away from the mundane so that you can focus on what matters most important to your businesses and your organizations, which is driving innovation, driving efficiencies, creating better user and consumer experiences for your products and services. Now, bringing that all together for VMware is our hybrid cloud vision. And this is something you've heard us talk about for a number of years, which is driving consistent infrastructure and driving consistent operations in all you do. You know, why does this matter? This matters because when I have that consistent infrastructure layer, I don't have to know an application's future at the time I create it. And as good as we all might be, we never do truly know what that future holds because the world changes. Requirements change, expectations change. I have an acquisition that I made that I hadn't considered when I was first architecting the application. This is the world we live in. When we're architecting, we have to bake in the expectation of change because that's just our universal truth. That's how we operate today. That's how we have to operate. So with Cloud Foundation and the VMware hybrid cloud model, you're able to have that consistent infrastructure layer anywhere that you might want to run those applications. And that's really key. So I can have the same tooling, the same telemetry, the same footprint for my applications, no matter where they run. And I can do all of this while at the same time ensuring a native developer experience. So if it's an application, your engineers can leverage the application's native APIs to manage it. If it's Kubernetes, kubectl Kubernetes APIs to manage those applications. If it's cloud services, native cloud services APIs or the web UI to manage those applications. So we can be invisible to the lines of business and the software engineers and at the same time provide the consistency of operations and consistency of tooling and processes that the IT operations teams require. This all happens with Cloud Foundation, as I mentioned, as you've seen for many years now with VMware as we've been on this journey together. So starting with a consistent hyper-converged infrastructure stack that can allow you to operate this infrastructure as a service layer in a public cloud, at an edge site, at a data center, anywhere your applications might need that layer now or in the future. Being able to do all of this in an automated fashion so that I can have a simple, seamless way in terms of how I'm managing the application lifecycle and the underlying lifecycle of the infrastructure services themselves. Many of you have been in ops for a long time and you know how difficult those upgrades can be just getting from one infrastructure version to another. So the more that we can continue to drive automation into the stack, again, the more time that you're going to have for some of these new sets of challenges that are coming our way. And now, you saw this earlier also from Pat in his keynote. Think about our leadership across the stack. You all know vSphere, #1 in market share, more than 300,000 customers. vSAN, #1 HCI software, 60% of the global 2,000 and more than 20,000 customers today. NSX, #1 SDN vendor, 13,000 customers. VRealize, #1 cloud management market share, 40,000 customers. So if you're not part of this group, what are you doing? Come on, right? You're here at VMworld, so get on board. We're really excited about the changes that we're driving into our stack and the efficiencies that we're driving into our stack, again, to make your world better. This follows our consistent commitment to cloud and the journey that we've been on for some time, starting with our cloud provider partner program in 2008. Here we are 11 years later. Think about all of the different partners that we've onboarded over that time. VMware Cloud on AWS, of course, as we announced that in the initial availability in August of 2017. This year we announced Azure VMware Solutions, VMware Cloud on Dell EMC as well, Google Cloud VMware Solutions as well. And we're continuing to make investments that can really broaden the way that you can leverage the infrastructure you have and maximize efficiencies of your infrastructure. You look at an acquisition like Bitfusion as a really good example of that, where I can now start to scale and connect remotely to GPUs and FPGAs over Ethernet so that I can have more and more applications get access to these advanced processing capabilities, which when you're starting to look at machine learning and inferencing workloads as a couple of examples, those are really critical capabilities to have. For Cloud Foundation, it's whatever you need. And again, these needs can change over time. So whether that's VMware Cloud on AWS to get that very quick on-ramp for hybrid cloud, whether that's using our cloud verified partners, whether it's using on-premises solutions as well. We have lots of flexibility here. Now, if you think about, as we start to build this out, just to give you an idea of our partners and that presence that we've constructed here, look at the data center presence of AWS, Google, Azure, and IBM. We start to add in the VMware Cloud Provider partners, and we have very strong global coverage for anywhere that you might want to operate your business. What does this all mean in total? 70 million VMs, more than 10 million workloads in the cloud, more than 10,000 cloud data centers are a part of this infrastructure environment in 128 countries, more than 4,300 cloud provider partners. We have 68 VMware Cloud Verified partners running that Cloud Foundation stack. Again, giving you that consistency and flexibility anywhere you might want to run an application. And now let's take a look at this broad partner ecosystem that we have. we've had strong historical partners for some time that have been on this journey with us. Folks like IBM Cloud and CenturyLink, just to give you a couple of examples, that have really been here through thick and thin through VMware and have been your partner and have been in the weeds with you solving your most pressing business problems. So we couldn't be here without our partners, and it's because of our partners that we have this ubiquity and this strong reach anywhere that you might want to do business. Now, it's great for me to kind of talk about this, but I think it's more important for you to hear from one of our customers firsthand. So what I'd like to do is introduce Ben Tanner to the stage. He's the Director of Cloud Enablement for IHS Markit.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Ben, great to see you. You've been on this incredible journey. You've done some things that are just absolutely mind-blowing, but why don't we just kind of step back and just talk about some of the challenges that you were handed to you from your business and how you've moved forward.
Absolutely. So IHS Markit, we're formed out of the merger of IHS and Markit some 3 years ago to create this sort of information powerhouse. We've got products that cover maritime, defense, automotive, financial services, so really we're all about data. And off the back of the merger, we had to look at how we were operating our infrastructure. It wasn't very efficient. We couldn't react to the business demands very quickly. We had a lot of technical debt, 7, 8, 9 figures of technical debt, astronomical. And that technical debt was really inhibiting our ability to execute as IT. So we had to sort of take a step back and say, okay, how can we do things differently? And that's when you guys, in partnership with Amazon, released VMware Cloud and AWS. And we saw an opportunity there. So that was really interesting for us to say, okay, we can leverage this technology and start to get out of the supply chain game and start to create a consistent operating model for how we run our infrastructure. On-prem, every data center is a little bit different. VMware Cloud and AWS, consistent. So that was where we started exploring.
So you started exploring VMware Cloud on AWS. Now, part of this challenge, you were trying to move a number of applications to the cloud. What are we talking about? How many applications?
Well, so we have a corporate goal of moving 80% of our applications to the cloud across the company. So we've got, depending on how you define them, somewhere between 600-700 applications on some 20,000 workloads. So a fairly large footprint. And, we started to say, well, what does it mean to move to the cloud? Does it mean we have to refactor everything to be cloud native? Now, our goal as a business is really to deliver value for our customers. And if we stop and start to refactor, that stops our innovation. So that's not really sustainable for us. So how do we get to the cloud and do it in a way that's as minimally disruptive to our product teams as possible so they can continue focusing on delivering customer value? And then we've got some breathing space. How do they then refactor for cloud native where it makes sense? And that's really where the VMC play comes in. So we can take a workload, we can move it up to VMC, classic 3-tier enterprise application, but then they can do things like incrementally refactor to consume some of the cloud native services. Again, where it makes sense, we don't have to go cloud native because we've already got a lot of the agility advantages out of VMC, and by leveraging things like VRealize Automation Cloud on top of that, we are operating in a cloud-like manner. It's transformative for us.
So we've migrated hundreds. So how many applications in total?
So what we've done so far, we're starting really in anger with our automotive business, but the first opportunity came up with an acquisition we closed at the end of mid-2018. It's a New York-based financial services company called Iprio. London and New York based, but they had a big data center right in the center of Manhattan that was tied to an office. And one of the first things you do as a company is you look at synergies. How can I close that office down? Oh, we've got 1,000 workloads in that office that are running all of our non-production corporate systems for Iprio. What do we do with it?
Okay, so 1,000 workloads.
1,000 workloads,
So
yeah.
6 months, 12 months?
Well,
How long did it take?
we kind of took a look at our data center estate and you think, well, hang on. We haven't got capacity to just drop those into one of our on-prem data centers. It takes us 18 months to build the data center. We don't really want to have to go and do that. So let's look at VMC. We're already evaluating it as part of the cloud migration. So we were able to take those 1,000 workloads and move them to VMC in 6 weeks.
1,000 workloads to VMware Cloud on AWS in 6 weeks?
In 6 weeks. It's a little bit more exciting than that because the first 500 workloads took us 4 weeks. And then we got the hang of it. And then we were able to move another 500 workloads in 2 weeks. And that's using HCX, that's using VRA, that's using VMC, and it just worked.
HCX. Think about that. Many of you have been on this journey with us for a long time. Even trying to use the converter in the early days to convert that many applications would have been pretty much impossible, right? 500 applications migrated to the cloud using HCX in 2 weeks. That is outstanding. That's quite the story. Ben, really thank you for the time and sharing it with us.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Outstanding. Thank you. That, folks, that's the power of VMware Hybrid Cloud. This is what we can do in terms of providing you that flexibility no matter where you might want to run applications. And again, it might work in cloud here. We might want to use a different VMware Cloud partner as part of this acquisition next year or whatever it might be. But this is flexibility that we continue to have baked into your application stack, which we see as a key design principle. And all the while, really looking to deliver for you a consistent infrastructure platform to deliver those applications on and run them anywhere, and a consistent operational pane to make sure that you have that consistent management and policy enforcement no matter where those applications might reside. And that's what you're going to hear about through the remainder of this keynote today. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and welcome up Mark Lohmeyer, Senior Vice President for our Cloud Platform Business Unit.
Hey, Chris. Mark. Thanks. All right. So good morning. It's great to be here with all of you. So what I wanted to do now is go a little bit deeper into our strategy and probably more importantly, some new innovations and capabilities we're enabling for our customers in the consistent infrastructure space. And I think, one thing that's interesting to note is this idea of consistent infrastructure is not really anything new for VMware or customers that have been using VMware. And if you think back to the early days of vSphere 20 years ago, fundamentally what that allowed us to do was take any server hardware platform and allow you to operate on it consistently, abstract and pool those resources, and enable a powerful new set of capabilities on top of that abstraction layer, vMotion, DRS, better HA, et cetera. As we went down that journey with customers, what they told us is, hey, that idea is great for compute, but how about storage? How about networking? Right? And so we introduced vSAN for storage, NSX for networking and security, wrapped a layer of management around it with VRealize for automation and optimization, operations, and we called that, or the industry called that, the software-defined data center. Our product instantiation of that is VMware Cloud Foundation. Now, the interesting thing we realized is that even though we call this the software-defined data center, what it really is software-defined infrastructure. Right? It's a set of software capabilities that can run on top of any x86-based platform. And so as we now go to the next stage of evolution of VMware, we're sort of taking that idea to the next level and delivering that same VMware Cloud Foundation-based capability, not just in data centers on anyone's server, storage, or network hardware, not just in edge environments on anyone's server, storage, or network or hardware, but also on any public cloud. Right? And so we think about this as the next big stage of VMware's evolution. The hybrid cloud platform is sort of the category, and VMware Cloud is the product/service that delivers that. Now, if you zoom out for a second, you take sort of a bird's eye view of this, sort of 20,000-foot view of this. At the end of the day, what this gives you as a customer is the complete flexibility and choice to be able to build, run, and manage your applications wherever the needs of the business require it, in a consistent way. Sometimes that might be in your own data center, sometimes that might be in a public cloud or multiple public clouds, sometimes that might be in the edge environment. But regardless of where you want to build, run, and manage those apps, we give you that same consistent infrastructure that spans all those different environments. So what I want to do next is dive a little bit more deeply into kind of the latest and greatest in the public cloud piece of this strategy. We'll go through kind of all the pieces, but we'll start with public cloud. Because it's been, as you've probably seen if you're watching the news, a fairly busy year for VMware over the last year in this particular space. So let me start with VMware Cloud on AWS. So 2 years ago we launched the service, and really the core concept here was how do we bring together the best of VMware, right? Those enterprise class features and capabilities, reliability, functionality that you depend upon for your most mission critical apps in your data center. How do we combine that with everything that customers love about the AWS public cloud? The global scale, the cost efficiencies, the elasticity, the global footprint, and all of the AWS native services. And so we really brought these two things together in this thing called, VMware Cloud on AWS. And, it's been widely adopted across our customer base, and we're really excited about the momentum we're seeing for this. We've also, over the last 2 years, been on this very, very rapid pace of innovation. And one of the amazing things, for us, and we hope also for our customers about delivering our capabilities as a cloud service is we can deliver innovation and value to you, and more importantly, you can consume it on a much faster cadence than we were ever able to before. So I'm not going to go through all the gory details and the features here, don't have time for that today. But over the last 2 years, we've delivered 25 releases of VMware Cloud on AWS, literally almost once a quarter. We're lighting up new features, we're lighting up new capabilities. Over the last year alone, we delivered 200 new features into the service that our customer base across the entire fleet, across all those AWS regions, can begin to take advantage of almost immediately. And so this is a model that we're really looking forward to continuing to invest, continue to accelerate our innovation together with AWS. And of course, as Pat mentioned earlier today, we've also been rapidly expanding the service around the world. So in the first year of life of VMC on AWS, we were a little bit more cautious, I would say. We said, hey, let's just support one new region per quarter because we want to build our operational muscle, we want to build that discipline, we want to do it right. So that's what we did for the first year. We kind of built up that muscle and built up that confidence. And so in the second year, we said, hey, let's press down the accelerator a little bit more. And so over the last year, we've now added anywhere from 3 to 4 AWS regions per quarter over the last year, and we're now up to 16 AWS regions around the world in literally every geography. And there's just a small number of AWS regions left not yet covered by VMC on AWS, and we'll expect to support those relatively soon. And of course, this is all based on where our customers are telling us they'd like to have access to the service first. So while the engineering delivery, the service delivery, the global rollouts, that's all great and kind of fun to talk about. But I think what's obviously even more important than that is the value we're able to deliver to our customers and the growth of customers and the growth of consumption of the service. So we did a little look back from last year, and since August of 2018, you can see some sort of interesting statistics here. So the number of customers has grown by 4x. The number of VMs on the service across all the customers across all the regions has grown by 9x. It's kind of interesting to look at the 9x in comparison to the 4x, because basically what it tells you is a lot of those existing customers are rapidly expanding their consumption on the service and platform. We've also made pretty significant strides in terms of supporting a broad partner ecosystem. So we have, versus same time last year, 3 times as many VMware competent partners on VMC and AWS. So these are like solution providers, CISOs, MSPs, et cetera, that are qualified to provide the highest level of service and support on VMC on AWS. And we've also tripled the number of validated ISV solutions. You can see on the lower left-hand side of this chart some of the key partners that have validated their technologies with VMware Cloud on AWS. And on the right side, you see something new that we're just introducing at VMworld this week, which is we're launching something called the VMware Cloud Marketplace. Right? So every great cloud has to have a great marketplace. This is our marketplace. And you can see some of the early partners that are making their technologies available to be consumed through your VMware commercial relationship. We're also taking the entire Bitnami catalog of all of their open source, Kubernetes, et cetera, instances that they can package up and make it very easy to deploy into your production environment. We're also making that available through the VMware Cloud Marketplace. So great traction, sort of growth and momentum we've seen here over the last year. What's driving that growth, sort of that exponential growth in consumption and customers? And at the end of the day, it comes back to the use cases, right? And do these use cases deliver meaningful value to our customers? On the bottom, you can see some of the logos of the great customers that are taking advantage of the service today. We're really fortunate to be able to work with with customers like this. We had IHS Markit up on the stage earlier. The interesting thing I think when you look at this is that these customers represent leaders in their industry, right? Leaders in a wide range of industry verticals, geographies, even different size of customers. In fact, if you look at sort of the names here, they kind of reflect the diversity of the core vSphere installed base, right, which is pretty broad. So we really like to see this because one of our design goals was that any customer who's a good customer of vSphere should be a great potential customer for VMware Cloud on AWS. And we're starting to see that actually happen in reality. So in terms of the use cases, cloud migration obviously is one of the killer use cases. You heard Ben talk about it earlier. Awesome story. I'll dive a little bit deeper to that in some of the broader statistics there in a sec. The second big use case we refer to as data center extension. So this is the idea that if you have the ability to spin up VMware compatible capacity anywhere where AWS is in a matter of minutes, it can open up some really interesting opportunities. Disaster recovery kind of becomes a no-brainer. You can use VMC and AWS as a DR target for your production workloads that you might want to keep in your own data center. Or things like burst capacity for bursty workloads, or even footprint expansion. For example, if you're a customer based in the US, but you want to expand to Asia, or you want to expand to Europe, but you may not necessarily want to put a whole data center in those locations, you can easily spin up VMware compatible capacity anywhere where AWS is. The third one here, virtual desktops, is a new one that we didn't talk about last year. And I think we've been, probably actually even a little bit surprised at the amount of interest that customers have running VDI environments on VMC and AWS. We got a killer solution here with Horizon on VMC. And what's really nice about this is if you think about all the work we've done over the last 10 years to make Horizon run great on top of vSphere and take advantage of all the fancy features of vSphere, all those enterprise class capabilities, we're able to immediately give you that same level of functionality, uniquely actually in any public cloud, give you that functionality on Horizon, on VMC, on AWS. But because it's a public cloud, you also get the same elasticity, the same consumption-based economics, that everyone, looks to a public cloud to provide. Of course, we also support third parties like Citrix VDI solutions on top of this platform as well. And then the last big use case is next generation apps, and I'll come back to that in a little bit more detail in a sec. So let's go back to cloud migration. So Pat talked about it earlier today, Ben talked about it. Let me give you a little bit of maybe a different kind of flavor of this. So what we did is we sort of were thinking to ourselves, hey, a lot of customers are using VMC and AWS for cloud migration. Let's go back and let's hire a sort of reputable third party, in this case Forrester Research and IDC, to actually go and interview some of those customers and try to get some information back on what has their experience been over the last year and how is it going, right? And sort of they came back and found kind of two pretty compelling things, or two interesting things. The first is that on average, those customers that were migrating to the cloud were able to reduce their total operating cost by 59%. And that was relative to what we define as a traditional data center environment previously. So what that means is just vSphere, not vCenter NSX, just vSphere, running on top of industry standard server, storage, networking hardware. So by moving from those hardware-centric environments to VMware Cloud on AWS, they were able to reduce their TCO by 59%. And that's, by the way, savings on an ongoing basis. That was split roughly 50-50 between sort of infrastructure savings, hardware and software, versus operational savings, kind of people and process. But the total savings were pretty attractive. The second thing they asked them about is, hey, you could have chosen to migrate, you're looking to move to the public cloud, you could have chosen, instead of using VMC on AWS, to migrate into a native cloud instance. And what they found here is that customers were able to save more than 2/3 of the cost of doing that migration by completely eliminating all this sort of costly rework, replatforming, all the things that Ben was referring to earlier. But probably even more interesting than that, they were able to take the migration time down from years to months, right? So 2 to 3 years to 2 to 3 months. Now Ben and his team at IHS is clearly smarter than the average bear, so they were able to do it in weeks. But the average that we saw across our the rest of our customers was around a few months. So again, this continues to be, I think, the killer use case for VMware Cloud on AWS. As a result, we're continuing to invest and enhance our capabilities for cloud migrations. We're doing work to make it more simple. So if you go look at cloud.vmware.com, you can see there's a new simple automated workflow that can sort of guide customers through step-by-step every piece of the cloud migration process to make it sort of very easy and prescriptive. We're also investing to make it faster and more scalable and more flexible. So we've made some significant improvements to HCX, where you can now not just migrate between on-prem and VMC on AWS, but between different VMC and AWS regions. Also, HCX is adding the ability to convert non-vSphere-based workloads into vSphere-based workloads, so you can bring them into that platform and then get all this future portability and flexibility. And finally, we continue to invest to bring down the TCO of those migrations and of running the workloads in the public cloud once you get them there, with support for things like new instance types, the R5 instance type, for example, support for EBS, which provides lower cost storage at high capacities. So, Migrate continues to be one of the most compelling use cases. But as you heard Sanjay talk about earlier today, what we're finding is it's not just about migrate. Customers want to migrate and modernize. And if you think about the last 2 years of VMC on AWS being all about how we can add value for those existing traditional workloads, what you're going to see from us over the next few years is how we can enable new services that allow you to help your business leaders transform, right? And help you transform, deliver new value, deliver new applications, and deliver new services. Working in conjunction with all the stuff you've already got. So 3 big areas here, and I'll double click on each of them. The first is building Kubernetes support natively into VMware Cloud on AWS, leveraging Project Pacific. The second is enriching existing applications or building new ML and AI services, taking advantage of NVIDIA T4 GPU instances based on the AWS G4 instance type, and we'll go a little bit deeper on that in a sec. And then the third area is continue to give customers more scale and flexibility in terms of the way they're able to integrate native AWS services into this environment. Previously, we allowed you to connect those 2 accounts, but we can only do one-to-one VPC connectivity. Now with us adding support for the AWS Transit Gateway, as we get sort of larger environments where you've got multiple VPCs, enabling that any-to-any connectivity, we think is going to be really powerful. And that's being driven by the feedback we've gotten from a lot of our larger customers. So let me talk a little bit about Kubernetes. So you heard Pat this morning, Project Pacific is probably the biggest new innovation that we've delivered in vSphere in the last 10 years. We are taking Kubernetes and we're deeply integrating it into vSphere to turn vSphere into a native Kubernetes platform, like a platform for modern applications and, of course, your existing applications, Kubernetes and VMs and containers. As part of this, we enable a whole new paradigm for application-focused management, where you can see on the top here, your application developers can create new services leveraging a combination of Kubernetes clusters, virtual machines, native pods, all managed consistently, running on top of the world-class VMware infrastructure across compute, network, and storage. So this is really exciting. Obviously, it's going to be super compelling for folks to take advantage in vSphere on-prem. But one of the beauties is because VMC on AWS is also based on vSphere, VMC also inherits all of those same capabilities. And so now you have the ability to do this consistently across your own private clouds and the public cloud with VMC on AWS. And you can already start to envision how this opens up a whole new set of powerful use cases where you can combine everything I just talked about that VMware is delivering with the elasticity and the flexibility and the global scale and the cost efficiencies of the AWS public cloud. Think about creating some new application on-prem, moving it to public cloud, scaling it, right? Or maybe starting in the public cloud, creating it there, moving it back on-prem. Maybe you can run it more efficiently in your own data center if you've really optimized that environment. Right? It opens up a really powerful set of new capabilities. And then, of course, the Tanzu Mission Control, right, which is Kubernetes-based management that's spanning our own Kubernetes solutions as well as third-party Kubernetes solutions will also be supported as part of this architecture. So this is a technology preview right now. We're not announcing a date for delivery yet, but we're really excited to be able to deliver this to customers in the not too distant future. The second big area is support for new AI and ML workloads. Again, you saw the video from Jensen this morning. We're really, really excited about this, right? Because again, you can see sort of the power here of combining everything VMware has to offer with the flexibility of the AWS public cloud, but now for a whole new class of workload types, ML and AI, and data analytics. And if you kind of think about this, right, what do these workloads require? Well, they require access to the ability to process and compute across massive data sets. And, also the need that you have for that capacity can vary widely over time, right? You might have some steady state and then some data scientist kicks off a new project. All of a sudden you need 20,000 GPU instances, right? And those GPU instances are not necessarily cheap. And so with this service, with running VMC on top of the AWS GPU instances, we can give you the ability to scale that capacity up or down, only pay for what you need, kind of when you need it. So we're really excited to be working with AWS and NVIDIA to enable this for all of you. Now, of course, it's not, although we're really excited about everything we've done with AWS and sort of shifting gears here a little bit now, we also heard from some customers is, hey, for me, I'm using Azure, right? Or for me, I'm using Google. And I would like to have some of those same benefits of a VMware compatible environment in Azure or in Google. And so 6 months ago, we announced our partnership with Azure around Azure VMware Solutions. The core idea here is to run the VMware Cloud Foundation stack in a dedicated environment in Azure data centers around the world. It's delivered and operated by Cloud Simple, who's one of our VCPP partners. They've done a really nice job of integrating that experience into the Azure portal and console. Allows you to apply Azure consistent APIs on top of a VMware-based infrastructure. And it's available to purchase through Microsoft, right? So you can purchase as an individual service, just like any other Azure service, or through Azure credits. And they've been moving super quickly. So as you heard from Pat, it's available now in the US and Europe, and additional regions planned for later this year and into next year in APJ. We also heard from many customers we'd like to have this same capability in Google. And so that's exactly what we've done, again, through our partnership with Cloud Simple. Cloud Simple is supporting and operating that service in GCP. This one will be sold through Google in the GCP marketplace and supported, again, by Cloud Simple. The timing here is the global rollout for this service begins with the US West and East, beta availability for later this year, and GA in Q1 of next year. All right, so a lot going on in the public cloud. So shifting gears here a little bit, the other thing we heard from customers is, hey, this idea of a VMware managed cloud environment in a public cloud is great. I love this idea of, hey, you take that heavy lifting, that hygiene of the life cycle of our software and the hardware underneath off of our plates. Why can't you do that on-prem, right? Why can't I do that in my own data center or in an edge environment? And so as we thought about it, we're like, yeah, there's nothing that's actually stopping us from delivering that exact same experience in an on-prem environment. So we launched Project Dimension, or we announced Project Dimension a year ago at VMworld. And at this VMworld, we're pleased to announce that VMware Cloud on Dell EMC is now available, right? So we're actually delivering and realizing that vision that we articulated just a year ago. And what we're doing here is we're delivering a complete VMware Cloud Foundation stack, a complete SDDC stack, running on industry-leading, world-class price performance Dell hardware. The same prescriptive stack that we're using for VMware Cloud on AWS, the same vSphere, vSAN, NSX, the same features, et cetera. Enable you to provision, configure, and monitor it through a SaaS control plane in a very consistent way to what we do with VMware Cloud on AWS. And then, of course, the full life cycle, the operations, the monitoring, all of that is provided by VMware as part of it being a cloud service from us. And we've been in beta with a few select customers over the last few months. These are some of the early use cases we find resonating. So edge and data center modernization, outsourcing some of those low value operations, switching from CapEx to OpEx. Public cloud-like consumption models are very attractive to many customers. Overcoming locality constraints, right? So it's a good reason why many applications need to continue to run in the data center or run in edge environments. Latency reasons, data sovereignty reasons. Just the size of some of these data sets is massive, right? And so the ability to have that cloud-like model in the data center is very attractive. And you can see here a quote from one of the early beta customers that's been excellent to work with and giving us great feedback, a company named Sugar Creek that provides food products. And you can see how it's really, they're viewing it as a great opportunity to transform and modernize the way that they're running their data centers. All right, so now no hybrid cloud platform can be great without great partners. And we are really pleased to announce a strategic partnership with Equinix, the global leader in data centers, co-location facilities, and interconnection services around the world. We share a very common vision around enabling this flexibility and this hybrid cloud set of capabilities for our customers. And so I'm pleased to welcome Charles Myers, the CEO of Equinix, to the stage to share a little bit more.
Thanks, Mark.
Charles, thanks. Great to be here. So it's been great working with you and your team, and maybe you could just share with everyone here a little bit about the Equinix strategy and then some of the value we're looking to deliver together to our joint customers.
Sure. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks so much. Thanks to all of you for coming today. And Mark, I really appreciate you, Pat, the whole VMware team, and the partnership that we've developed. As you know, we've been great partners now for many years, and I'm convinced that really the strength of that partnership and the continued momentum in that partnership comes from a very common view of the marketplace, as you just said, and how it's playing out. One of my colleagues leaned over to me and said, look, these slides, sort of have a lot of commonality in terms of how we feel like the market is playing out. And that's not because I think we both have common, really smart people on our teams, which we do clearly, but I think it is driven more so by the fact that we're listening very carefully to the customer. Customers like Ben, and who have the kind of needs that he described here. And I think when you look at what you had on your previous slide there, what's really exciting is about this, VMC on Dell offering, is you're bringing three market leaders together for them to each do what they're best at. And I think that what it allows for is that simplicity, flexibility, as a service convenience of the cloud, combined with the control, sort of compliance, predictability, and performance of private infrastructure. And when that is deployed at Equinix, it can be deployed in proximity to all of the cloud resources, network resources, other resources that a customer needs via the ECX fabric. And so we're super excited about that and delighted to be a part of today's announcement as your preferred partner there.
Great, thanks. We're really looking forward to working with you guys. And maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the early adopter customers. We have Cisco up here on the slide.
Yeah, what we're seeing, and Cisco's a great example. They're a terrific customer of both of ours.
Exactly.
And we are actually terrific customers of each other.
That's true.
And so we, to some degree, are leading some of this on our own, working together. But Cisco is a great example. Similar set of challenges of what Ben, described in terms of, and what we're seeing is customers really, they've got this commitment to digital transformation. I think they're going to invest in that as a means to develop competitive advantage regardless of macroeconomic environment. And what we're seeing is really an architecture of choice emerging, and that has 5 key components. It's global. The economy continues to globalize despite maybe the tensions around the trade of physical goods. The trade of digital services, it continues to explode globally. So number one, it's global. It's highly distributed. Chris talked about these applications, and they didn't really show the geographic dispersion of these applications, but what's happening is they're going further and further away from the centralized data center. Third, they're cloud first. People want the benefits of cloud, and that's why you had seen so much momentum in public cloud. They're cloud first, but they're also hybrid. So I would say that the 80% desire that Ben outlined is pretty consistent with what we see from a lot of customers. So some a little more, some a little less, but they're saying, look, we would love to move significant numbers of these things, but we also recognize that many of them require private infrastructure for a variety of reasons that you talked about. And then they're multi-cloud. They want the clouds to be, they want to use them for what they're best at, and they want them to be vigorously competitive with one another for obvious reasons. And so I think we have a very common view. That's what we're seeing from these customers. We really think that, the digital edge is the place to put that private infrastructure, and Equinix is in many regards the best manifestation of the digital edge with 1,800 networks, 1,000 plus cloud providers, and a huge market share lead in all the on-ramps to the major public clouds.
Excellent. Well, we are really looking forward to working with you and your team to enable this great hybrid cloud experience for our joint customers.
Well, again,
thank you.
We really appreciate you having us, and I think you're going to give us an outline of what comes next.
That's right, yeah. So maybe back to me. So we've been working, as you mentioned, with some key early adopter customers. Plan is, we're in beta now. Plan is to GA early next year, starting with the US, and then scale this out across the world. So we're looking forward to that.
Thanks again, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care. Thank you.
All right, so you can see we've been busy enabling this hybrid cloud platform across public, private, and edge. But of course, the consistent infrastructure is actually only half of the story. So the other half of the story is consistent operations, and for that, I'm pleased to welcome Purnima Padmanabhan to the stage, and she'll take us through that strategy. Thank you.
So you heard Mark explain how this consistent infrastructure truly spans everything, your private data center, the public cloud, and the edge. But then how do you allow for consumption of this beautiful infrastructure that you have created? And that is where consistent operations comes into play. It helps you answer the following questions. You've got a bunch of workloads. How do you automatically secure them? How do you make sure that you give an access which is self-service for your end users so that they don't have to understand virtualization? How do you make sure that you are automatically scaling the capacity? You know when you're running out of capacity and you can have VMC be provisioned. And how do you optimize all of this? How do you pack your VMs? All these are questions that you can actually answer with consistent operations. Now let's take a look at what we are doing with consistent operations. When we think of consistent operations, we have always had a brand, which is VRealize. VRealize has been the anchor brand for managing environments across multiple SDDCs as well as public clouds. And that is a key player in making SDDCs across these various environments work, be it public cloud, private cloud, or the edge. But that's not all. We are also expanding it with a bunch of workload services, be it cloud migration, desktop as a service that Mark talked about, DR as a service, cost optimization, the Kubernetes services, marketplace, as well as application observability. All these are very critical services that have to layer on top of this consistent infrastructure. So imagine you have VRealize everywhere, and on top of it, a consistent set of operational services that allow you to deliver the kind of capabilities you want for your end users. And these are some of the names of the products that you will see. Of course, VRealize Automation, Operations, Network Insight, and Log. We also have the Marketplace, which is powered by Bitnami. We introduced Tanzu Mission Control and Kubernetes Grid that is baked into vSphere. Wavefront to give you application operations and application visibility. Horizon Desktop as a Service, now available right on top of BMC. Cloud Health Hybrid for your costing and optimization. Hybrid Cloud Extension for your migration capabilities. And DR as a service with site recovery. Now, as I said, we always have done operations very well. We've been the #1 in cloud management, and consistently for many years with, as Mark said, 40K plus customers. And now the same management is available across all these form factors that Mark talked about, be it the edge, be it VMC on Azure, VMC on Google, VMC on AWS. The other thing we would like to announce is that the VRealize platform that you used to use on-prem is also now available in a SaaS form factor, VRealize Cloud, which is your VRealize Automation is also available as VRealize Automation Cloud, and you can pick and choose the form factor. And finally, a single pane of glass to manage SDDCs across the globe. So let us take a look at some of these services and see what we have done, the innovation that we have brought in. So let us start with self-service with VRealize Automation. Now, VRealize Automation is tightly integrated with VMC to provide that cloud layer, that IaaS surface that you need on top of your vSphere environments. We are announcing VRealize Automation 8.0 as well as VRealize Automation Cloud. And what it does is you have got your virtualization infrastructure with vSphere, NSX, and vSAN. Now you want to expose this infrastructure and make it available for your lines of businesses, for your developers. What they want to consume is not raw virtualization. What they need is VMs, just different kinds of VMs and flavors. Give me a VM size small of different kinds of flavors, maybe Ubuntu that you've hardened. They need networks. They need services. They may say, I'd like to get a database service. They also need to be able to connect to other public cloud services. So you may have an application that is deployed on VMC, but needs to connect to S3 for storage. So to be able to expose those rich set of services, you need a layer that allows you to curate your environment as well as provide policies and governance. And that's what VRealize automation does. This self-service console can also be populated with content from our Bitnami solution that Mark referred to, a whole slew of open source content that is available now natively into the product. And you can, of course, create and manage your own content. The other thing, it has become very clear to us that as you start doing operations at massive scale, you need everything to be both available as UI and code. So this is a fundamental tenet that we are establishing, everything as code. You can deploy applications in YAML file, you can define your policies as code, as well as even set up entire SDDCs. Imagine you have a simple catalog, you can call it through your pipeline and set up your new SDDC environment and deploy your application on the fly. So deployments that used to take months can now happen in minutes, and that is the power of having this layer. Complete integration with ecosystem. You are not going to be able to, no cloud is an island. We know that as enterprises, you have to integrate into your Active Directory, into your ServiceNow ITSM catalog. All these integrations are now built out of the box. And of course, it comes with a whole set of policies. So you can decide which groups have access to which kind of infrastructure services. Now, one thing that we have not talked much about in the past, but what we have done with VRealize automation is we have integrated a pipeline service into the automation service, which means now you can expose these pipeline services to your lines of businesses and developers so that when they check in code, automatically that code is picked up and deployed to the VMC solution of choice, whether it is, and based on policies that you determine. For example, you can say my highly secure application needs to be close to my data, should go into the data center. My scale-out application needs to go into the VMware Cloud on AWS East region. All these can be defined by policy, and with a single click of a button, magic can happen. The other area we have doubled down quite a bit is VRealize Operations. We are announcing VRealize Operations 8.0, and we are announcing the tech preview of VRealize Operations Cloud. So you can sign up now and start trying it. We are also announcing VRealize Network Insight 5.0. So one of the key things is that when you get started, and Ben, for example, again, Ben, of course, you have brought up many times. Thanks, by the way, for saying VRealize Automation Cloud. When you start the process of migration, one of the first things is to understand your real estate. You need to understand what do you have there, what kind of applications, what VMs can you cluster together and decide to migrate. And that is where we are adding the notion of application discovery as a baseline capability into the product. Both with Network Insight and VRealize Operations, we look at your flows with Network Insight and decide the groupings of your application. We look at tags and CMDB and understand the nature of your application. And this becomes the starting point for all other operational activities. So you'll see this natively into the product. The other thing is, we've been consistently told by our customers that you've got very powerful operations capability, and it can do many things. But how can you simplify it so that we can get from problem to resolution quickly? And that is where our AI and ML-driven approach comes in. We have invested heavily in AI and ML to rapidly understand the probable causes of an issue, put it into a single pane of glass, and give you a troubleshooting workbench so that within a few minutes in a war room type of setting, you can identify that one area which is problematic. Another thing that we have done, you will hear, is we are also announcing the idea of Project Magna, which doubles down on this AI ML notion, and I'll talk about it a little later. Now, you also know about Skyline. Skyline is our knowledge base with our support system, GSS, and it's essentially knowledge gleaned from hundreds of calls that we get from customers. And support knows exactly how to match these patterns and resolve these issues. Now we are taking these critical pieces of information and piping it directly into your product in VRealize operations. We have, of course, this presentation would not be complete if we didn't say all these products are fully capable and functional on your VMC environments. And then finally, with Network Insight, we are truly providing that edge, be it VMC or SD-WAN edge, to the data center, to the cloud visibility, both in terms of latency and connectivity. So again, with these set of operational tools now, you can have complete visibility across your entire environment. A quick overview of what we are doing with Project Magna. One of the questions that we kept asking is, we know when we find a problem. We also know how to resolve a problem. So imagine if we could automate that in your infrastructure. Your virtualization infrastructure gives you today a powerful set of knobs that you fine-tune. And imagine if you could fine-tune those knobs on an ongoing basis to get the best performance from your infrastructure for your applications. So that is what is Project Magna. It is a reinforcement learning-based approach that allows you to get maximum performance out of your infrastructure, but dynamically. We dynamically understand the needs of your application and turn those knobs to the perfect setting to deliver the optimal performance. And again, we'll be showcasing more of that. Now, the other area we have invested, and truly it was about stitching a solution together to make it easy. We have talked about cloud migration and many different examples, but when you look at all the steps, it's not an easy task. You have to understand your current environment. You have to figure out which applications you want to migrate. Then you have to figure out how to use, what kind of sizing you need, how much capacity do you need to add in VMC. And then you have to build a connectivity, and then finally comes the deployment. It's a whole series of steps. If looked at separately as discrete set of steps can be pretty complex. But what we have done is we have brought the power of VRealize Network Insight to go and look at the flow boundaries, identify the applications and connectivity, as well as HCX, Hybrid Cloud Extension, to create that network bridge between your data center and VMC so that you can very rapidly, in a systematic way, do large-scale migrations from cloud to cloud. And I think, Mark, you touched a lot on the value and the savings that can come from here. Another area we have introduced, again as a service, is disaster recovery as a service. Mark touched upon how that is a very critical use case that we are seeing for VMC. Imagine you have your production environment running on-prem, and you want to have a disaster recovery site. In the background, we enable vSphere replication so that you simply can have the set of machines, set of VMs be replicated out to VMC. And the best part is we can get up to 5-minute RPO time. So you can automate failover, you can automate your rollback, your fallback, all of those activities from this single pane of glass. And it is now integrated and available with VMC as a service from the Cloud Console. So really, power of some of these services is, imagine if you can take your deployment time from months to minutes. Imagine if you can save order of 20-30% from your operational services. That is what the power of operations is. The best part is we have brought it all together. You don't have to go to learn these alphabet soup of product names. There is one console. You see all your SDDC environments in this one console. From the same console, you can navigate down to the operational solution of choice in context and be up and running in minutes. Here is a is a visual of how you can see all the integrated solutions, a solution showcase, a solution navigator that allows you to get your solutions, as well as set of infrastructure. I'm going to leave you with a vision of where we might take this even further, an operational dashboard that takes all these SDDC environments and pulls it again into one single console where you understand the health, you understand the risk, you understand the compliance, you understand the capacity, all in one place. So with that, I would like to conclude. What we have done is we have brought together consistent infrastructure, paired it with consistent operations to give you that complete hybrid cloud that you can leverage to run all your businesses. Visit us at Cloud City. Thank you.